Hi, everyone. Welcome. I am Sergeant Jake Pekina. I'm with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. Welcome to our Regional Police Academy here for this great event tonight. We thank you all for being here. Just real quick, couple of housekeeping items. If you need restroom, right outside this door and to your right, and it'll be on your left if you need. There is Wi-Fi in here. It says guest 1. All you have to do is open up an internet window, connect to that, and agree to the terms of service. Terms are quite reasonable. You can agree to the terms and have internet access in here, because I think the cell signal is not great in this room. I'd like to welcome you guys all to Operation Engage. This is one of 11 Operation Engage sites across the country being coordinated by the DEA. So that's very exciting. This is the first one that's happening in the state of Missouri. So you guys are part of history in the state of Missouri here for this type of event. So thank you all for being here, and we really appreciate that. Right now, I am going to introduce our first leader that is going to address you guys. He is from the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency. The DEA's mission is to disrupt, dismantle, destroy drug trafficking organizations. So we have here tonight Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Miles Ailey. He is a 19-year veteran of the DEA, and he has been here in Kansas City for nearly 2 years.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here. I'm very happy to see you here. Welcome, and thank you for coming out. It's a sign that you care about your community, and that by being here, sacrificing your time, you're trying to help make a difference. And that's what we're trying to do as well. We have experts on this panel from law enforcement, treatment, survivors, people who are willing to share also their pain and the tragedies that they've suffered. And we in law enforcement see that tragedy, and so we take on this role that isn't quite comfortable for us, of educating to try and prevent it from happening to anyone else. We're suffering in the United States through a opioid epidemic. We've lost, by the CDC's numbers, over 108,000 people last year to drug overdoses. And the big driver behind this is a synthetic opioid called fentanyl that you've probably heard of. You'll hear a lot about it tonight. It's a drug that was designed to help with anesthesia and surgery. And evil people who are willing to profit and prosper from the pain and suffering of others realized that they could cheaply and easily make an extremely potent, extremely addictive drug. And so they co-opted this fentanyl, which has a very legitimate and very good medical use, for abuse. And it's something they can make up in a laboratory. They don't have to depend on a growing cycle. They don't have to ship it from South America in barges. They can have the chemicals shipped in under the guise of being legitimate chemicals for legitimate purposes, and then combine them to create this very powerful synthetic drug, something that's 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. So if you've ever seen a war movie where someone gets horribly burned or their legs blown off and the medic runs over, sticks them with the needle, and they immediately stop screaming, that's a representation of morphine treating horrible pain. So you imagine something that's 100 times stronger. We're starting to see it mixed with every kind of drug. Once again, because it's profitable. They can mix it in and sell it as cocaine or heroin, or most dangerously, for what we want to talk about tonight, as pills. There's a impression, especially among our young people, that if something comes packaged as a pill, it must be safe. It must have come from somewhere official. And that is not the case at all. These criminals are perfectly capable of reproducing just about any kind of pill you can imagine and marketing it to our loved ones. What you see there on the screen is a representation of just how potent it is. Something the size of 10 to 15 grains of salt, if it's pure fentanyl, is a lethal dose. What you see there on the tip of that pencil is a lethal dose of fentanyl. It's very hard, very easy to make, very easy to press pills, very hard to dose them effectively. So when you're mixing up your batch and then running it through a pill press, if you get the mixture wrong, you'll wind up with pills that don't do anything, and pills that do just what you want to, and pills that kill people. So the message DEA wants you to leave here tonight with, and the message we want desperately for you to share, is that one pill can kill. This isn't something that you can experiment with. You can't go to a rave and try ecstasy or Molly. You can't take a pain pill from a friend or a stranger. You can't take Adderall to help you study. When it doesn't come from your doctor and your pharmacist, you don't know what's in it. The person who's giving it to you doesn't know what's in it. 4 in 10 pills seized by the DEA last year did contain fentanyl and contained also a lethal dose of fentanyl for a person who wasn't used to it, who didn't have a tolerance. So your friend who's offering you Adderall to help study for a test that you're really worried about could be unwittingly giving you a poison tablet that will end your life. As part of the pandemic, we've seen a rise across the country in mental health issues, people suffering from depression, people who've lost their jobs. And along with that, going hand in hand, we've seen a rise in people trying to self-medicate and treat that pain and suffering that they're feeling. And unfortunately, it's all too easy to get your hands on something that might treat it, but also is very likely to kill you. We've seen a shift in the marketplace for illegal drugs. No longer do you need to go down a dark alley or drive to a bad part of town and do a hand-to-hand transaction with a dangerous-looking stranger. With the rise of online banking and transactions and social media, you can now purchase anything you want off of social media websites and have it delivered to your house and pay for it anonymously through some banking app. As parents and educators and people with loved ones who could be exposed to these dangers, you need to be aware and help educate your family and your loved ones to the dangers that we're all being exposed to through the social media networks and through the many ways that criminals are finding to spread this poison and to make money off of us. As I mentioned, it's very hard to dose, but very easy to manufacture. When fentanyl is manufactured for surgical medical purposes, it's done in a very controlled environment, and these are images of a pharmaceutical production plant and a pill pressing plant for pharmaceutical purposes. It's all very carefully monitored, lots of quality control where they can get down to the micromilligrams of dosage to make sure that the doctor can prescribe exactly what's needed to treat whatever he's treating. When it's done clandestinely and illegally, either here in the US or south of our borders in other countries, it's done in a situation that looks more like this. There isn't the quality control. The only object is to make as much and as much profit as possible. They want it to be potent. They want it to be addictive. They don't really care how many people are killed because they know there's always more customers. If they can get young people especially to try it, and I'm sure our treatment experts later in the evening will talk about just how vulnerable young people are to addiction. And the younger they're exposed to these substances, the more dangerous it is for them. The vast majority of these products DEA seizes and sees in our investigations flows across the southern border from Mexico. That's where the cartels that initially realized the potential market here are, and so they're ahead of the game there. Had the infrastructure set up. They have the connections to receive chemicals from China and India and other parts of the world, and they have the chemists to produce these substances and the ability to press them into pills that look like any kind of pill you want. They could come pressed looking exactly like the real thing and be sealed in blister packets or in pharmaceutical bottles, just like they came from a pharmacy. DEA spread across the country, trying to combat this plague and this epidemic of poisonings in every community. We are a small agency, and so to multiply our efforts, we try to build partnerships, which is kind of what you see here on the stage tonight. We try to make connections with our community and especially with the law enforcement in every community so that we can share information and share resources and combat this at every level. We also have offices around the world where the liaison DEA agents who are assigned to Mexico or India or China are there training counterparts who need training on how to run these kinds of investigations or deal with these substances, helping to advise our diplomats in the State Department on the pressures that need to be brought to bear on companies and shipping and customs officials so that we can try and stem this tide at every level. Although we're working tirelessly to do that, as you can see from the numbers of deaths and the seizures that continue to rise each year, it's not something we can do alone. Despite our best efforts and our best partnerships, we really need community engagement as well. We need to reduce the market for these drugs. We need to have less unwitting participants who are being poisoned and tricked into this trap of addiction and this cycle of destruction. So that's where you all come in. We plead with you to educate yourselves. There's information readily available with a simple Google search. Try to get the facts and try to speak about it to people you care about. Let's try to put an end to the horrific stories we constantly hear of people who tried to treat their pain, and the first time they tried, they were poisoned and died. Speaking more about force multipliers, DEA is part of 192 state and local task forces. We deputize over 2,300 state and local detectives, experts in their field in narcotics investigations to help boost our efforts and to make us more effective. We work in foreign countries with specially selected and trained and vetted counterparts of foreign national police officers and prosecutors to attack these problems at their sources, at their transit points, and to make as much of a difference as we can in those countries as well. The education piece of this, meetings like we're having tonight, we hope will add to the harm reduction and the prevention of people using these drugs. And we're trying to combat the idea that may have existed in the past that you can experiment with drugs or that they can be a party enhancer. It's really just not the case anymore. The current potency and addiction potential is just not something that you should risk. If you suspect that a loved one is suffering from this, you need to get help right away. You need to turn to one of the addiction treatment professionals. It's not something you can wait on. It's going to turn deadly far sooner than you would wish. we'll hear from some of these experts about the signs of drug use and especially opiate use. One of the frequent questions we get is, what does it look like when someone is under the influence of these drugs? It's something that makes you sleepy, basically. It's a depressant. Some users have described it as the best feeling they've ever felt. But someone who's had too much basically falls asleep and stops breathing. So again, my message to you is that this is a terrible danger. It's worse than playing Russian roulette. The odds, according to our hard and fast data, the seizures that we've made over the last year, 4 in 10. That's worse than the 1 in 6 odds of playing Russian roulette. It would be 2 in 5, if that helps you. So I really plead with you to listen, ask questions, and try to take as much information as you can from this evening and help us help our community. Thank you very much.
As Miles mentioned, we've got a great panel of experts here tonight. I want to reassure you guys of a couple things. If you guys have questions, we have built in some time at the end of this to ask questions of all of our great panelists, so be thinking of those questions. If something pops into your mind, feel free to write it down or make a mental note of it. We'll have plenty of time for questions. Also, we are recording this tonight with our audiovisual equipment, and we will take that and post it on the KCPD's YouTube page, so we can go back and watch that later if you guys choose. So if there's something that you missed or didn't catch or really wanted to make a note of, it'll be available online afterwards. On to our next panelist here. This is Captain Ben Caldwell. He is a 20-plus year veteran of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. He has led investigations teams of all types of violent crimes, as well as narcotics investigations. He currently supervises in the Special Investigations Division almost all of the narcotics investigations that take place in Kansas City. He supervises those investigators. So he is a very seasoned investigator and very knowledgeable about drug-related investigations, and he has some great information for us tonight.
Generous with the great part, right? So a lot of what I'm going to say, some of it's going to be kind of repeated from what Mr. Alley said, which tells me I'm on point with my facts and my figures, even some of the terms, which is kind of scary because we obviously presented these at different times, prepared them at different times. So I began with saying fentanyl, is it a friend or a foe? Because really it's a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of all drugs. It is a medicine designed to manage pain, and it's been abused and transformed into a poisonous and lethal substance. As a matter of fact, the CDC, let's see if it's going to work. Yes, the CDC now reports that fentanyl is the leading cause of death, fentanyl poisoning, leading cause of death for Americans between the age of 18 and 45, which is really a scary thought because this has really only come on the past couple of years this strong. It's overtaken suicide, homicide, vehicle accidents, you name it, #1 cause of death. We hope to bring awareness to the dangers of fentanyl poisoning and to curtail these tragedies. And I implore you to talk to your friends, your family, about what you hear here tonight. Just take a couple nuggets. We're going to post it up on the department's website later on that you can get detailed information if you want, or more facts and figures. Because if each of you tell a few people, and they tell a few people, we can get the word out, and we can try to stem this tide. So to combat fentanyl epidemic, we need to understand what it is. The company Janssen Pharmaceutical first developed fentanyl. Wrong way. Janssen Pharmaceutical first developed fentanyl in 1959. It was used as an antiseptic and a pain reliever for medical purposes. During the 60s, it began to be used intravenously as an anesthetic, and it was called Sublamaze. By the mid-90s, the fentanyl patch was introduced and was a godsend for people with chronic pain that could be administered and delivered throughout the day. They eventually turned it into called an Actic lollipop, which was just yet another way of introducing the fentanyl into the system to try to help with the pain. Legitimate use of fentanyl has recently morphed into illicit use and has taken over the illegal drug trade. Drug cartels have learned that they can import fentanyl, process it in labs, add it to existing drugs such as heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, and benzodiazepines. I'm sure there are others, but that's really what we're encountering right now. The purpose is to make it more potent and to increase the dependency of the drugs, because fentanyl is extremely addictive and it happens very, very quick. Since it's produced in small labs, the large swaths of land aren't needed. So typically in the cartel grow operations, marijuana, things like that, they have to have huge fields to grow the product. Or for cocaine, they have to have huge fields to grow their product and then synthesize it in labs, which makes it easy to get caught. With this, as we just heard from the DEA, they can bring it in chemicals, they can put it in small clandestine labs or terrible labs, produce a product, and go regularly undetected. The easy access and transportation to make it simple to put the product in the hands of the end user. You don't have to have, it's fentanyl, it's a very small product. You can transport large amounts in a single vehicle, so they can avoid detection and they can get it across the borders and into the hands of the user. These less extravagant means to cover it up, it really makes it more profitable. And let's be honest about it, it's a business. To the cartels, it's money, it's a business. The cheaper they can produce it, they're not concerned with quality control. Cheaper they can produce it, the more they can sell it for, the better they're going to be. Hence, the reason for the increased dependency. Cartels are now learning that the end user prefers fentanyl to all other drugs. So they're really beginning to shift their product strictly to fentanyl. They're just cutting out the middleman entirely. The fentanyl is sourced primarily from China, and it comes into the United States primarily from Mexico and from our eastern and western port cities through the ports, directly from China and India, as DEA has previously said. Here in the Kansas City region, we're primarily seeing ours come from Mexico and from California. There's a huge pipeline from California directly to KC, and then further distribution, Minneapolis, Arkansas, onto the East Coast. But Kansas City obviously having I-70, I-35 intersecting, it's going to be a huge hub for that product from the south or from the east or west. Fentanyl is odorless, it lacks color, it lacks taste. It's a powder, and as he said, it can be pressed in any shape. It can replicate any pill. It's really the chameleon. They can add dyes to it. They can press them to look like something innocuous like a Xanax. It can be turned into an aerosol spray to contaminate food and water. It can be added for nasal inhalers. The most common forms we're seeing here in Kansas City are the kilos and the pills. Approximately 500,000 counterfeit pills can be manufactured from a single kilogram of fentanyl. The most common pill we're seeing right here is called the M30 or the blue. It's a tablet meant to replace clorazepate dipotassium. I screwed that up. Dipotassium. It's a common benzodiazepine. I want to show you a picture. That's kind of what they look like. This is what they look like. This is one of our seizures we interdiction squad got. We get them all the time. 9,000-10,000 pills off an individual. That's how common we're actually getting them. Don't be fooled into thinking that you can tell the difference between a real M30 and a fake M30. Here's one. Here's another. They look pretty similar. The font really kind of depends on how well it looks. People are going to judge often by the font, saying it's really crystal clear. It must be produced in a lab, or vice versa. The reality is it all just depends upon the pill press, how the font is in the presses. Home presses are very cheap. Anyone can purchase them. They can bring them home. They can be used as a single pill press. Some can produce up to 10,000 pills an hour for as little as $1,000 a press. So here's an ad I pulled up today on Amazon from a pill press. What are they asking for that? $69 to make a single pill press at a time. The body is quick to develop a tolerance to fentanyl. Many users report a rapid progression from a couple pills a day to 15 or 20, and then quickly on to just straight powder fentanyl, where they can't even ingest enough pills to get high anymore. And what they need, they have to go straight to the powder from the kilos, from the bricks. Many of our long-term users admit that they don't even get high anymore. They're just simply trying to avoid from being dope sick, which is terrible. If you've ever known someone that's went through that, it's debilitating, and most people can't. Most people just can't take it. So they have to continue to use and use just to keep from falling ill. Fentanyl is known to kill many first-time users, especially those that think they're taking something as innocuous as a Xanax. As I said before, it's a powder. It can be pressed into to any form from this kilogram brick. Here's one such brick that we interdicted, 909, that's the California code, so whoever the cartel that stamped that indicated that it was going to go to California. It was shipped there, and then from there, wherever it was going to be intended to go. This one actually was going to, where'd Mike go? Mike's gone. I think this one was supposed to go to Arkansas, I believe. These bricks, they're typically between 6 and 9% pure fentanyl. The rest is all cut. And the dealers will break up the bricks and press them into pill form or sell it as powder. The danger happens during this mixing process. Some pills are instantly lethal, while others are completely harmless, depending upon how well it was mixed. And as he said, it's commonly accepted that 2 milligrams of fentanyl, approximately 10 grains of salt, is enough to be lethal to most anyone. It's like a game of Russian roulette. Same terms. Fentanyl has exploded over the past couple of years. It's now the drug of choice in the region. It's currently flooded. As of June 30th, KCPD Drug Enforcement Unit has seized 47 pounds of fentanyl, or 21 kilograms. Keep in mind, 500,000 tablets per kilo. And we've gotten 21 so far this year, straight kilograms. That's to show how flooded we are. The number of overdoses are equally astounding. The KCPD alone has reported 6 fatal fentanyl overdoses and 34 non-fatal so far this year. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg. These are numbers that are only documented in Kansas City, Missouri, no outside jurisdictions, where fentanyl is the only substance in the body. So the other ones would be like a poly, which means they've got meth in their system, they've got heroin in the system, they've got fentanyl in the system, and the medical examiner can't say for a fact that the fentanyl is what killed them, only that it was a contributing factor. When you add those in, you add another 5 fatal deaths and 7 non-fatals. But really, that still doesn't tell the picture. These numbers are cases where officers were called to a scene and handled the ambulance call. This does not include ambulance runs that we have no idea about, self-transports we have no idea about, people that go to the hospital on their own, pass away, and the medical examiner rules their death a fentanyl overdose. Those numbers aren't in our stats here. So that really should kind of, I found it quite terrifying and eye-opening. We typically receive pathology reports from the medical examiner's office between 8 and 12 weeks after the death. So really, these stats are only April or May. June, July is not even considered in those numbers of deaths and overdoses where they were revived. The numbers are going to go up as we continue to get those reports. There are countless others that I said we were unaware of. The victims of these poisonings really range from infants to 50-year-olds. I know in 1 week we had an infant death and I believe a 5 or 6-year-old death due to fentanyl. And one instance where someone was they thought the baby was teething, they thought rubbing a fentanyl pill on their gum would help. So this really, really dangerous stuff, guys. This dangerous drug is a focus of our drug enforcement unit, and we're going to do what we can to stem the tide. We're notified on drug overdoses. When we are, we're going to respond, and we're going to try to conduct follow-up with those that survive. We're going to hand out cards, resource pamphlets, and see if they'll cooperate to try to help us identify the source so we can try to stop this from happening again. Those that pass, a little harder, but we try to assign those out and work them back and try to identify the source. And I want to say this from the bottom of my heart, that those that provide fentanyl and a death results, whether it be from a sale, sharing, accidentally, intentionally, giving away, we don't care. If someone dies as a result of that, we're going to come after them, and we're going to try to incarcerate them so they can't hurt anybody else. That's a harsh statement, but it's life. That's what our unit does. Our local, state, and federal partners are working together to hold you accountable to the users. The sad truth, though, we can't arrest our way out of this. We can lock up people to possess. We can lock up dealers. We can charge those for the death if they harm someone. But we can't do it alone. If that were the case, we would have done this back when the war on drugs started in 1971. It was before I was born. If we haven't won it now, we're not going to. This takes a whole community effort, hence tonight. We have to work together as a community to educate our people, hold the drug dealers accountable through the criminal justice system, and provide resources to help those that suffer from dependency issues. That's why this panel is composed of who it is. You're going to hear tonight from someone that made it out. You're going to hear from someone who lost. You've heard from myself and the DEA, and you're going to hear from resource providers, and there are resource providers out in the hall. And I encourage you, again, if you know someone that's suffering from this, reach out, get that help. Now that we know what it is, we need to understand what it does. The effects of fentanyl, they're similar to most any other opioid. It begins with relaxation, euphoria, pain relief, sedation, confusion, drowsiness, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, urinary retention, pupillary constriction, and respiratory distress until death. Imagine suffocating on dry land. It's not hard to understand why people would be drawn to the noted effects early on. It sounds fairly recreational. But it's also easy to see how it escalates so quickly from a fun recreational or an escape mechanism to a deadly situation. There's no stigma. There's no outward signs of usage. It doesn't eat your flesh like crocodile. It doesn't cause your teeth to fall out like meth. It doesn't leave track marks in your body. It doesn't cause your nose cartilage to be eaten away like cocaine. It doesn't require a bottle. It doesn't require a needle. It's as simple as taking an aspirin. And like Miles said, it's as easy to obtain as taking an aspirin. If you don't want to leave your house, you can order it up on social media. It comes in U.S. parcels. It comes through FedEx, UPS, however people want to ship it. You can go out and meet anyone on the corner. You can go on social media and do searches for it, and you're going to find someone that's dealing fentanyl. It's everywhere. It's cheap. It's quick money, and it's deadly. I also wanted to talk real quick about myths. This wasn't part of my original thing, but one of the members that talked about myths isn't here tonight, so I'll just add this. You're hearing all these dangers of what fentanyl is. If you encounter it, doesn't mean you have to go running out of your house screaming and lock all the doors and freak out. Okay, touching it is not going to kill you. It's even in powder form. The risk is inhalation, either breathing it in or ingesting it orally through mucous membranes, things like that, but actually just casual contact. As law enforcement, we handle it all the time. We treat it very seriously. We go very safe. We have to assume if it's a powder, we assume it's fentanyl until we know differently. If we think that it's a powder that can become airborne, we're going to put on big suits so that nobody can get around it, nobody can get exposed. But typically these little tablets, we're just putting standard PPE, rubber gloves on, handling it, and sending it to the lab for analysis. So don't freak out if you see it. It's not going to kill you unless you ingest it. I also want to say that about this stuff, it's very non-discriminatory. We've had people from very wealthy neighborhoods say it never happened to me, and you'll find out that it does. This drug doesn't care who it is, and they don't care if it's a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, 50-year-old, if they're rich or they're poor. It doesn't matter where they're at in the city, location, socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter. So it was intended to be used to treat pain, but others use it recreationally to get a euphoric high. Many self-medicate. They use it to escape life, pain, emotional or physical. Still others use it unintentionally. They think they're taking a Xanax, an Oxy, a Percocet. Though death is tragic, no matter the means or intent, it's especially hard on those that lose someone by accidental means, that didn't know they were taking it. Loved ones of addicts, they learn to process it. They learn to accept it. That when you have a loved one that is addicted to a deadly substance, you live in fear that you're going to get that phone call or that visit in the middle of the night, but you can kind of mentally prepare for it. What you're going to hear tonight is a story of someone that didn't get that opportunity. So when someone ingested accidentally, or since it's so easy to do, they're doing it and unbeknownst to family members, they get that terrible visit in the middle of the night, and they've had no time to prepare, and it's just crushing. It's devastating. Imagine the broken heart of a parent who sends their kid off to a sleepover or to camp and then gets visited that night from law enforcement saying that person's never coming home. I can't fathom it. So what does fentanyl poisoning look like? If you're thinking of a homeless person, if you're thinking of some TV villain, you're thinking wrong. You need to look to the person to your right, the person to your left, maybe the person in the mirror, because fentanyl affects us all. This poison does not discriminate. It's deadly to the unsuspecting user, just as much as it is to the hardcore addict. Drug's a killer, and it's incumbent upon all of us to fight back and take it head on. If you or someone you know is using fentanyl, or any drug for that matter, talk to them to get help. There are recovery experts here to offer assistance. You can order fentanyl tests off Amazon. I looked today. They're a little pricey, but hey, if you're insistent upon taking pills and taking things that weren't prescribed to you by a doctor in its original packaging, at least test it. At least test it. You can order Narcan online. I went and checked it out today on Amazon. They've got big kits, they've got small kits. We carry Narcan in my unit because we're dealing with it so often. And Narcan's not an absolute. We've had some people that respond very well, many others don't. I know that the KCFD, when they did it in Kansas, the KCFD member said that their boxes of Narcan originally were 6, I believe, per box, and a box might last them a week. And now they're to the point where they're using sometimes 5 doses in a run, trying to keep them alive to get them to the hospital. Because it all is, it's a temporary stop until they can get you to the hospital and try to save you. It's not a guarantee. Finally, parents, talk to your children about this killer. Warn them of the dangers of taking prescription drugs that are not prescribed by a doctor and are not in the original prescription bottle. Spread the word. Do your part to stamp out this epidemic before it claims another life. I want to show you, this is what I saw on Amazon today on test strips. This was 25 for a, I'm old, I need readers. I can't see the count. You can see it up there. Google it. It's available to anyone. Narcan, boom. Before I show my contact information, I'll show you one more thing. This is a press. This is a $1,000 press, if it'll play. No, it's not going to play. Okay. It's not going to work for me, but that's okay. If you're interested in seeing how quickly these things are, just Google it, pill press, and this thing stamps out like 10,000 an hour. It just takes the powder, and they dump it in a hopper, and just just pops them right out in press form that they can bag and distribute and sell. 10,000 an hour. So, thank you. If you have any questions, my information is right here. Feel free to take a picture of it. That's my phone number. You can email me if you have any concerns or community concerns. 1-800, is it 474-TIPS? 474-TIPS. I'm not saying we can run out and investigate every tip. We get a lot of tips, but at least it points our undercover units in the direction they need to go to try to stamp this stuff out. Okay, so feel free to do that. You call, email directly. With that, once I'm done, I'm going to sit down because I'll let a Q&A session. This is Sergeant Mike McKenna from my unit, and he's going to do the Q&A because he's forgotten more than I know about fentanyl and other drugs in the units. With that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Captain Caldwell. There is also, if you're interested, on the KCPD website, there is a link to anonymously report drug issues or drug locations, and those go directly to the drug enforcement investigators. If you remember in Captain Caldwell's presentation, he put up 2 different pictures of blue pills. One of them was counterfeit and one of them was not. We conducted a little experiment on our department's social media several months ago. We put those 2 pictures out and asked people which one they thought was counterfeit. It was about 50-50 what people answered. And they were, either side of it, they were very confident in their answers. So 50% of them were wrong in which one of those was counterfeit or fake. Our next panelist, our panelists are here for several reasons. They are engaged for several reasons. Our first 2 panelists are here and engaged because they're part of the law enforcement community, part of investigating these. We mentioned that we have panelists here that are experts in investigating, experts in addiction, experts in recovery services, and experts in tragedy. Our next panelist is an expert in tragedy. Libby Davis is here with Keepin' Clean for Coop. She is going to share the story of her son Cooper and the impact that opioid and fentanyl has left on his family, his friends, and the community. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm going to start with a quick video. So the kids you saw on that screen are all high school aged kids. They all died after taking a pill, or even half of a pill that they thought was a real prescription pill, like Oxy, Percocet, Vicodin, or Xanax. Fentanyl has changed the drug landscape in the past few years. Taking pills has been normalized for this generation, and they're often self-medicating. Kids are easily getting pills on social media, as we've already heard several times, often being delivered to your homes. These are not party deaths. Many of these kids take pills at home alone for their parents to find them dead in their own bedrooms. I just wanted you to see some of these faces because they look a lot like our kids. This is my kid. This is Cooper. He was so much fun to be around, always entertaining us. He was extremely outgoing and never met a stranger. He had the most infectious smile. He also had a very kind heart. He had a big soft spot for kids with special needs and couldn't pass a homeless person without offering something. Cooper loved water. If there was an ocean, lake, pond, river, or puddle, this kid was in it, and it didn't matter how cold it was. Cooper was into all of the extreme sports: motorcycles, skateboarding, mountain biking, scooter tricks, rock climbing, cliff jumping, snowboarding. He was a self-taught natural at everything he tried, and there was no such thing as too high or too fast. And cars, he loved cars. He was adventurous to a fault and absolutely fearless. Of course, Cooper was far from perfect. He was resistant to the guardrails that we as parents tried to keep in place for him. He was so independent from the moment he could walk. He was strong-willed, hard-headed, and a risk taker. Can any of you parents relate to this? Cooper also thought he was invincible. On August 29th of 2021, Cooper was deceived to death. He was 16. He had just started his junior year at Mill Valley High School. It was a Sunday afternoon, and he was at a friend's house. We got the call that every parent fears. Shawnee police saying that Cooper was having a medical emergency, and we needed to get there as soon as possible. We would learn later that 4 boys decided to share 2 pills that they thought were Percocet. 3 boys lived, and Cooper did not. He had taken half of a fake pill that was filled with fentanyl. This slide shows us how fentanyl has changed the drug landscape. Back in 2015, the number of fentanyl deaths were very similar to other drugs, as you can see from the yellow. On the right, you can see that fentanyl deaths are grossly outpacing deaths from all other drugs combined. This graph shows us how drug-induced deaths by drug type for ages 15 to 24. The yellow line shows us that fentanyl is the main culprit. The number of fentanyl deaths has doubled in 2 years, and in 2020, fentanyl accounted for 76% of all drug deaths for this age group. In the old drug use model, it consisted of movement from experimenting to recreational use, then potentially habitual use, and then sometimes addiction. Addiction is where most overdoses used to occur. With this new model, with the old model, there was a chance for intervention, or a chance for the user to learn and maybe grow out of their risky behavior. With the introduction of fentanyl and the new drug landscape, experimenters and first-time users are dying. These are not accidental overdoses. They are being poisoned. They are not taking an excessive amount of a drug they intended to take. They are getting the tiniest amount of a drug they did not know was in that pill. They don't have a chance to learn from their mistakes. So the question is, how do we prevent our kids from following through on their curiosity? How do we change their mindset of it will never happen to me? And let's not forget, how do we change the parents' mindset of not my kid? I don't know these answers, but I can tell you what it's like to be in the club that no parent wants to be in. Fentanyl changes everything. You don't just lose a child once. You lose them every time you wake up to a new day, and multiple times throughout the day when they pop into your mind. It might be a photo, a place, a song, a food, a word, a movie, a show, a car, a person, a brand, or a memory. I often feel like my thoughts of Cooper come more often in these days that we have to live without him. It's not something I will ever get over. I will, however, learn to live with the broken heart that has forever changed me because a piece of me is missing. Everything is different. Memories, good and bad, are now followed by a wave of sadness. Our future on this earth will forever be incomplete. Every event, experience, occasion, reservation, party, birthday, holiday, celebration, vacation, and family photo will have a noticeable gaping hole. We will never have a perfect day because Cooper will be missing from it. These are just a few things that fentanyl changes. We want Cooper's story to serve as a cautionary tale to all who hear it, so please share it with everyone that you know. We cannot over-communicate to our kids and our loved ones about the dangers of fentanyl. So please do what you can to make sure that someone you love is not deceived to death. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that very powerful story, being here with us tonight. Next, we have a young person in recovery from right here in Kansas City. He's going to share his personal story about addiction and the road to recovery.
Thanks for coming tonight, everyone. My name is Milan Naster. I'm a local of Kansas City, and I was invited here tonight to share with you a little bit about my road into addiction and then my road out of addiction, which is now in recovery. Addiction was an accident. It wasn't something I pursued on purpose. Grew up in Kansas City, normal family, siblings, good household. I don't think that has anything to do with my story. Really, it all just started out as wanting to have fun. I was warned as a kid not to take drugs, watch who I hang out with, watch for bad kids. I don't know if I hung out with bad kids. I hung out with good kids who did bad things, and I became one of them. For me, it started out the way that you would imagine it would start out. It's marijuana. For the first time, smoking marijuana when I was 10. It was offered to me by someone at school, and for me, it started out as inclusion. I just wanted to be included with friends. I wanted people to like me. I wanted to be someone, and I think at that age, that is what was most important, is feeling like I had a community around me. So at age 10 is when I took a drug for the first time, marijuana being a drug. I drank a little bit as a young person. I think for me, I couldn't let mom and dad find out, and the smell of alcohol was something that was hard to hide, and that's where drugs really kind of escalated for me. It was something I felt I could hide more. It was something that was a lot easier to find than you would think. I didn't have to search far for it. I was in high school from 2007 to 2011, and all you had to do was ask around. All you had to do was ask any kid in the hallway, and someone knew where something was. For a long time, it just was marijuana, and that was something I felt like I could do recreationally, and I denied the fact that it was a gateway drug. Eventually, you hang out with people that do that, something else will be offered, and I was no scientist in high school. I didn't know really what people were offering. It was just, I have a pill. Would you like to take a pill? And I felt confident that I could manage one pill. And at first it started out with just doing that on the weekend or on occasions. I think eventually when you start to feel something new as a young person, you want to reach for that feeling again. And that really started the spiral for me, that I sought out that feeling and I could not find that feeling again. And in searching for that feeling, it was taking things that I didn't know about. I didn't know what a benzodiazepam was. I didn't know what an opiate was. I didn't know what it was I was putting in my body. I just took it. And if it was a name that sounded familiar, it seemed safe. If it was something I hadn't heard of, it didn't seem so bad. When I say that addiction wasn't on purpose, I wasn't taking these things to get addicted. I was 17 when I realized if I wasn't taking something, I didn't feel like me. And it took me almost a year to find out that that was an opiate. I didn't even know what I was putting in my body. I just knew how it made me feel. And for me, the symptoms were waking up in the morning feeling like I had the flu. Diarrhea, nausea, muscles on fire. I couldn't connect the dots because I had no education of it. But I came to learn really quickly that my fix, the fix to my feeling, was a pill. And that's what I began doing daily. It gets really expensive really fast, and it gets scary because you stop caring about who you're meeting, and you stop caring about who they are, where they're from, how someone else knows them. You just look for the fix. And that's what my story was for a long time. As you spend time with others who do drugs, you start to learn things that you wouldn't come up with on your own. Something that came up for me was to start looking around the house for family members that may have had surgeries, may have had injuries, and had pills around the house. My oldest brother was born with a rare bone disease, and I was 18 when I connected the dots that the pills that I was buying were inside my home, and there was a really good portion of them. My goal was to take 2 and never take any again. And then 2 became 4, 4 became 8 until the bottles were empty. And that happened very fast. Right after I got out of high school, I know I had aspirations. I went out to California to do acting. I got accepted into an acting school out there. I thought my problem was in Kansas City, and if I could get away from the problem in Kansas City, it would all get better. And it turns out wherever I went, there I was. And it was waiting for me there as well. Found my way back to Kansas City. What quickly happened was, as drugs became more expensive in my life, the option for finding something at a lesser expense became more and more important to me. It stopped being about getting high. It very quickly became for me to be back at 0. I'm not trying to get to 10. I just want to feel like myself. And opiates and drugs made it to where I couldn't feel like myself unless I took them. I know that sounds backwards. That's what happens neurologically in your brain, and the withdrawals, the dope sick that has already been mentioned. It's the worst feeling I ever had in my life. What's crazy is there was never an option to stop. I didn't think that was possible, that I could just stop taking it, go through the worst parts of it, and then I would never have to feel that way again. I didn't know that was an option. I had all of this from my family and friends. The few people that knew about it were people who were actively doing it with me. None of those people who saw me digressing quickly cared enough to say anything. I was someone who would find things for them, therefore I was their friend. When I was 19, I started using heroin. And the reason for me was it was cheaper than pills. Now, I never had a dealer warn me of what was in it. I never had them say, be careful, this is strong. Be careful, this is laced with XYZ. They didn't know what they were giving me either. They got it from someone who got it from someone who got it from someone. That was never communicated to me where it was coming from or what was in it. 18 and 19, people started dying around me and I didn't know why, because it seemed like we were all doing the same thing, and it's taken me a few years to understand we never really knew what we were taking. We had no idea what we were taking. We wanted to believe we knew what it was, but we didn't know what it was. My life became wake up, use, work, use, sleep, use. And that was just to feel normal. And I hid that from everyone in my life. When I was 22, after getting in trouble with the law, after having bigger problems come from drug use, a friend of my family saw me working at a restaurant I was working at. And it's the only time ever someone approached my family and said, I think something is wrong. And this man called my mother and said, is Milan sick? And she said, no. And he said, then something is seriously wrong. You need to check on him. Because of him speaking up, I was granted the opportunity to get sober in Kansas City. I had accepted that drugs or alcohol would be how I lived until it took me. And I knew that's how it was going to go, because there never felt like a way out. I knew of recovery centers. I knew people could manage without drugs or opiates, but it seemed like an impossible adventure for me. All it took was one person reaching out and saying, I think you need to investigate this. And when it was investigated, I had lost enough at that point that I was willing to give something else a try. August of 22, I joined the Crossroads program in Kansas City, which is a young people's program that give you a opportunity and a community to live and spend time with like-minded people. I never thought I'd have fun again without drugs or alcohol. I didn't think I'd be able to work again without drugs and alcohol. The recovery center in Kansas City and the education that gave me showed me that it was possible. And the only way I could believe it was to see it through experiencing it. Had someone done that for me in high school, I think I would have avoided spiraling down. Just someone saying, I think you should investigate a program like this and be around like-minded people. My sobriety date today is September 16th of 2015. My life today consists of telling my story to people who also feel like they're at the jumping off place, that don't feel like there's a solution outside of drug use, and taking what I have done that I have had shame over and using it for good, which is showing other people that there is a way out. There is a way out of addiction. There is fun in sobriety. There is fun without having to put these unknowns into your body. I've been to more funerals since I have gotten sober because I'm constantly surrounded by people who think they're smarter than the drug or stronger than the drug, and nobody is. There's a lot of last hurrahs who think they can go out one more time, and all it takes is once, because you really just have no idea what you're getting, what it is, and what it's going to do to you. I'm grateful that there were places in Kansas City that I could go and learn and was really given just a second chance of life, and a lot of people aren't. So if you know anyone or even think, there were people when I was getting sober that asked me if I was under the influence when I wasn't, and I wasn't offended when they asked me that, because I saw how it saved a life just by asking. Really grateful for the opportunity to come up and share my story. I'll have 7 years of abstinence this September, and thank you. And if I can be a help in anyone's life, I hope you'll reach out to me so I can be a part of their story. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that experience and that story, and congratulations as well. Next up, we have David Roberts from the Crossroads program. He has more degree letters behind his name than anyone I've ever met before. So he's a really, really, really good resource here tonight. He's here to share information about addiction and recovery among youth, young adults, and how parents can support kids in the recovery process.
So, just to clarify, they're not actually degrees, so don't think too much of that. There are a lot of letters, though. You know, they make my name look cool. So yeah, I'm David Roberts. I'm kind of representing two programs today, the Crossroads program and the Full Circle program. And I'm not going to talk a lot about what we do specifically, but I will just kind of quickly mention, you know, what both of our programs are substance abuse programs for adolescents and young adults in the Kansas City area. We both provide long-term alternative peer group, support group systems, so that, you know, getting sober is exactly like Milan was talking about, you know, an opportunity to find other young people that are actually living a sober lifestyle and finding something better than using drugs, and supporting each other and being able to be a part of a community that can actually help you maintain long-term sobriety. So we both do that. The Full Circle program is a totally free program, a nonprofit organization that provides that wonderful support group, and the Crossroads program is that in combination with an intensive outpatient actual treatment program. Just so you kind of know, and I grew up in Colorado, and I'm in recovery as well. I got sober in 2001, so it's been a little while. I was a very young person when I got sober, and I won't talk a lot about my story, but I do have that experience, and my recovery has been a blessing, and continues to be, getting to be a part of things like this with you all. And I moved out to Kansas City to do this job. So I've been out here. I've been working for this program for about 15 years, and I've been doing this job out here in Kansas City for about 7. So, I just I don't know. It's hard for me thinking about what I wanted to talk about today. I don't have a lot of statistics. I don't have a lot of information like that. Obviously in our programs we deal with everything from, marijuana abuse to fentanyl addiction and alcoholism and everything in between. What I can tell you is that working with young people in this area, and we work with young people from every area, from Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, all the way up north, to Lee's Summit, Johnson County, so it's all over. And honestly, like all these guys were talking about, there's really no difference. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what school people go to. It doesn't matter what age they are. The fentanyl abuse, the fentanyl use is clearly on the rise by the kind of kids we get in the program. It's amazing to see the amount of opiate addicts that come into the program that have no clue, like Milan was saying, that they're opiate addicts. They don't know. Some of them think that they're using benzodiazepines and that's all that they're using, but they're really addicted to fentanyl. Other people know that they're using Percocet, but again, they don't know what's in there. They don't know the amounts, and it's the ease of becoming physically addicted at such a young age has it's just skyrocketed. We by just the nature of how we operate our facility, we don't do detox, we don't do a lot of super high risk situations, so we don't deal with this a lot. But just recently, for the first time, we had a young person overdose at our office. And that's because of fentanyl. He went out and did one pill and overdosed, and he did make it. And obviously, moved on to continuing to get help. But it's scary. It's just really scary stuff. And I think about the effect. There are so many young people in our program that it's just part of what they deal with growing up now is their friends passing away from this drug. It's very rare that I have a young person come into our program that doesn't know somebody that's died from this and doesn't have to deal with that as a part of their life now and their trauma and just a part of their reality. So it's scary. I think that part of what I wanted to discuss, and these people touched on it a bit, one person mentioned the vulnerability of young people. I can tell you from my personal experience and from everybody that I work with, young people don't start using drugs most of the time. 95% of the time, a young person does not start using drugs because they're dealing with emotional pain. They don't start with self-medicating. I started, and pretty much everyone I work with starts out of curiosity and peer pressure. And the reality is that we all know peer pressure and the kind of power that has. And my first use was at 12 years old, and it was because 16-year-old girls asked me if I wanted to smoke pot with them. And I just wanted to hang out with 16-year-old girls. And I was, and I was adventurous and always a risk taker and always those things. So yeah, sure, and the problem is that the first time that I got high, I fell completely in love, and nothing had ever made me feel that way. I smoked pot and I had never felt that good in my life, literally. All of my normal, everything a teenager is supposed to be going through. We're uncomfortable in our own skin. We're going through all these crazy hormonal changes. We don't quite know where we fit in. We're figuring out who we are. Everything's a popularity contest. Obviously, social media has made things so much worse as far as the self-esteem of young people in every community. And the social disconnect and all of those different things, that void to fill, the instant gratification, all of that's just, it's obviously higher than it's ever been, and drugs immediately met all of those needs for me. It was, I don't have another way to put it than it was just a euphoria of false self-esteem that I had never experienced. So all of a sudden I can be myself, and I think people like me, and I'm comfortable in my own skin, and I don't have to feel all the pains of being a teenager, and what my mom said that pissed me off the night before doesn't matter anymore, and all my problems go away, and it was, and I had more fun, and and I was cooler. So it's really everything a young person wants, and that feeling in itself is addictive. I was listening to you guys talk about there's no such thing as really experimenting anymore, and I know this is, I'm not going to talk a lot about pot, but I believe that even goes down almost to marijuana use these days. Between the potency and the level of dependency, and what I'm describing as an emotional dependence that starts to get formed so quickly. The power that I had to control myself, and the power that I watch these young people have, really goes away when they know there's an answer to everything, like that. So I wanted to bring that up for a couple reasons. I actually have a few statistics here that I used recently for something else. I forgot they were in my phone. So I wanted to read them because they're really more about young people than anything else. It's more than 90% of people who have an addiction started to drink alcohol or use drugs before they were 18. 70% of users who try an illegal drug before age 13 develop a substance use disorder within the next 7 years, compared to 27% of those who try an illegal drug after the age 17. Only 10% of 12 to 17-year-olds needing substance abuse treatment actually receive any services. And the average age of a heroin addict in treatment in the United States is 23. And I just think that represents the vulnerability of young people. It's again, nobody intends on it happening, but it's honestly, it's very hard to avoid, and it's hard to avoid in our community. So, the main things I wanted to stress getting up here to talk, as they've honestly been talked about, but I think, number one, there is nothing that can replace early intervention. You do not have to wait until your young person has a problem with Xanax or opiates or heroin or anything like that. I think that treating drug abuse as any other sickness, and treating drug abuse severely, right? If your kid is sick and you don't know what's wrong, it's not a big deal to make a phone call and take them to the doctor, take them to the urgent care, but knowing that somebody's smoking pot and their behavior's changing and their attitude's changing and maybe there's some alcohol involved in these things, there's a huge stigma to going and actually seeking help and getting an assessment from a professional and actually investigating if there's more to the surface. I can tell you on probably one hand, out of the hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of young people that I've met with, probably on one hand when a parent actually knew everything that was going on with their kid by the time they took them into our office. Every time, what the parent knows is the tip of the iceberg. Really, truly, almost every single time. So I believe in early intervention. I believe, like Milan was saying, in speaking up and being honest with people, whether it's your child, whether it's a friend, whether it's somebody else's child. I know that it can be very awkward social situations. It doesn't always feel like the appropriate thing to do. I just think about, at the end of the day, what do I want to look back at my actions and what am I going to feel the best about myself for knowing that I did and what I contributed to a situation. So I just think picking up that 1,000-pound phone, whatever that call might wind up being, going and getting a cup of coffee, whatever needs to happen to actually have an honest conversation with a friend or a family member or a loved one, to say what you think, and be willing to risk that relationship. I watch a lot of parents come into our program that haven't confronted a problem the way that they wanted to for a long time because they were scared to risk their relationship with their kid. And that is a scary thing, but I just think obviously the result is worth that risk. And obviously if any person gets help, they end up being grateful for the person that stood out and said something when they didn't want anything said. That always turns around to be gratitude. So I just think that's critically important. And I think past that, like I said, getting somebody actually in to talk with someone who really knows what they're doing, a treatment professional, an assessment service. There's First Call is an assessment service that's up here today. Crossroads is, the Full Circle program is. There's so many more in our community. There's a lot of community tables out there that, I'd obviously encourage everybody to get pamphlets from and talk to and ask questions. There really is a lot more help than people think. It just takes reaching out and searching for it. So I don't know. I think that starts the whole process. The only other piece that I wanted to touch on before I get down from here is, as far as recovery goes, I guess really just the reality that, Milan's story is not uncommon, and it truly is possible for anybody. I watch it every single day. I watch miracles of recovery happen, in our program, out of our program. The fact of the matter is there are sober young people here in Kansas City. There are alternative peer groups. There are alternative solutions. There's good treatment, and there's good people that really want to help, and that recovery really does happen. I think that what's really important is knowing that there's no quick fix solution, right? I've never seen a 2-week long or a 30-day long treatment program that fixes somebody. Maybe it's happened. I just haven't witnessed it. This is not a quick solution. This is a full-blown lifestyle change, kind of internal rearrangement of what's going on with us while we're using, peer group change. The family all has to work on, ideally the family's going to work on changing things as well. There's a lot that goes into this solution. So I just think I wanted to get that message across that if anybody watching this or here today is looking for help, look for long-term solutions, look for solutions that have real solid long-term aftercare past just, and I'm not saying anything, so there's some wonderful residential programs out there, short-term residential programs. There just needs to be continued follow-up care and a long-term solution. And again, a change of an actual lifestyle, not just a quick fix of a problem. Recovery is not like drugs. It's not just, doesn't happen overnight, so I think those are the main messages I want to get across. I'm grateful that we're doing this, and I think that platforms like this is what needs to happen so that we can all collaborate. And I think the more of this that we do, and like these guys were talking about, the more we get the word out and just are honest with each other, it's the only way that we're going to move towards a solution with all this. So I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. Our last two panelists have shown us that there is hope, there are options, there are answers. Our last and final panelist, Michelle Irwin, is no different. She is here with First Call. She's a community outreach specialist, and they are going to share about the Road to Recovery services that are offered through First Call and how fentanyl and fake pills are impacting addiction at this time.
There we go. Hi, everybody. How are you this evening? It's very good to have you here. I'm very glad to be here. As I was introduced, my name is Michelle Irwin, and I am the Community Outreach Specialist for First Call, Alcohol, Drug Prevention, and Recovery. We are a local nonprofit in the Kansas City area that provides a full continuum of care around substance use disorders. So what does that mean? Well, that means we provide, there we go, prevention in the community by being present at things like this, events like this, and going into schools and working with community groups and on educating individuals, families, and the community on the impact of substance use on our bodies, on our lives, on everything. We believe that education is a key component to prevention. We also have a 24/7 crisis call hotline, which is always answered by a human voice that you can call at any time and ask any questions, get answers, or get resources for the subject matters you're dealing with substance use disorders. We have recovery advocates, counselors, we have prevention specialists all on staff. I'm going through this kind of quickly for the sake of time and because you've heard a lot of what I was going to talk about already. So I just want to reiterate that there are so many resources available out there. I came into this career later in life. I came in and I started working at First Call in 2008, and I am a person in recovery as well. I will celebrate 17 years in October. And I had I had no clue as to the extent of resources that are really out there and available. As you've heard talked about tonight on these panels, it is a sampling of what's out there. First Call is the access to all of these. If somebody were to call us and be concerned about their young person, we would send them to Crossroads program. We would tell them that that's where they should go to seek help for their young child. So that's how we work at First Call. We don't provide the treatment. We build the recovery plan for the individual and for the family members too, because you may have heard at times that this is a family disease, that it impacts at minimum 10 people around us. A person dealing with substance use. Those people need some attention too. I can't tell you how many times I'll be talking to an individual and they'll be expressing their concern for somebody they love, and I say, well, you need to call us and let's talk to you about our How to Cope program, where you can come in and seek some advice and some help and some education for yourself. And they say, oh, no, it's not my problem, not my problem. And then I say, okay, do you get up every day and say, if so-and-so doesn't get drunk, I'm going to have a good day? Do you know how many times that answer is yes? Every time. And I say, there you go. Let's talk about how you don't have to get up and say that anymore. So we not only help individuals, we help family members, and we help the community. And I'm gonna go through this quickly, just so we can get to the other things I wanna talk about. Because I also wanna talk to you today, I was gonna talk to you about the impact of fentanyl and opioids and the deaths in the community and the deaths going on and the increase, but you have heard that from these experts already. I do want to put one number in your head, though, one statistic. Since 2019 to 2020, the number of drug-related deaths in the Kansas City area went up 55%. 55%. That shows us what an impact fentanyl and drug deaths are having on us. And I appreciate what's been said that we don't say overdose all the time because there is stigma attached to that word. There is stigma that says that somebody did it on purpose. When nobody can hear me? Oh. Okay. Okay, because I wander around when I talk. I can say from my research and studies that over 99%, and that is a number I'm pulling out of my hat. I do not know the number exactly, but I can guarantee you that the majority of these deaths from drugs were poisonings. They weren't intentional overdoses. So that is very important to keep in mind because I want to impress on us how important it is to think about harm reduction when we talk about drug use. Now, you may have heard that term before. Harm reduction is a way to minimize potential harmful impact of risky decisions. Let's think about that. To put it to you simply, sunscreen is a harm reduction. You know, when we figured out that too much sun was going to give us skin cancer, we started using sunscreen, right? Think about safety belts. You guys can probably tell us how much the accident or the fatal accidents dropped when we started using seat belts all the time. A lot. I mean, like 80%, wasn't it? It was huge number. Speed limits the same way. Birth control. Cigarettes. Harm reduction. We've got educated on the impact of tobacco on our health, and there's studies show that in the mid-70s, when that Surgeon General report came out, the percentage of adults smoking cigarettes dropped from like 80% to 30% or something like that. It was an amazing drop. So harm reduction works. And there are ways to practice harm reduction with substance use. Simple ways, simple things you can do at home, like lock up your prescription drugs. Get a lock cabinet. Educate your young people. Talk to your kids about what's going on with them. Open up the conversation. Be positive about it. Be educational about it. Encourage your schools to talk about, to bring in people like First Call or Crossroads to talk about the impact of using drugs on a young person. And you can even go farther and carry Narcan. We've already heard about Narcan, and it is a drug that can be used to help an individual who is experiencing an overdose reaction to opioids. Fentanyl included in that. Fentanyl is an opioid. And it blocks the brain receptors from receiving the opioid stimulant and helps the individual breathe better, helps respiratory raise back up. So it is something that works. We don't know, as you already heard, we don't know real numbers and stuff, and it doesn't work all the time, but it can help save a life. And in my opinion, and the opinion of First Call, if we can do something to save a life, we're going to try and save a life. We have more information at our table on Narcan, and we also have a few, a small amount we can hand out to you and how to use it. And I know there are some myths out there that say people who are saved by Narcan or know that it's around are more apt to use more and stuff like that, but we have a list of we have a sheet with those myths on there as well, and if studies have shown that that's actually not true. That more people who have Narcan or know Narcan is present are more apt to dial 911 and help somebody than those who don't, who aren't educated on it. So it is an opportunity to help reduce this impact, reduce the impact of drugs and alcohol on our community. And I would like to get to the end slide and give you some of First Call's information so that you can know what numbers to call, but we are out there. There we go. There's some resources there for you to look at, and we also have some on our table, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'm grateful to be included with these expert panels here. Thank you.
One more time for all the panelists, please. So now we've got the questions, and they have the answers. Now's the time. If you have a question, please raise your hand. I'll bring you the microphone. Okay, here we go.
How is the court system working with the police departments to make sure that charges are pressed? Prosecutors, are they with you? Are they against you? What does this look like?
I'm Michael McKenna. I'm with the sergeant with the Drug Enforcement Unit with KCPD. Real quick, I wanted to point out, she discussed about harm reduction. One of the more important things we want to put the word out is that there's a state statute, it's 195-205, and it protects those that want to make a report in regard to a medical crisis or an emergency, an overdose. So those individuals won't be charged for a crime. So I think that's real important that we put that information out so that people feel safe, you know, that they can call 911, they can get the help that they need. So often we hear, well, we were concerned we were going to get arrested or go to jail, but that's not the fact. They're protected by state statute, so I wanted to get that out there. You know, as far as how the prosecutors are operating with us right now, it really depends on the county. South of the river, we're not getting as much cooperation as we'd like. North of the river, they're working with us quite a bit. But you're seeing the movement away from prosecution of user amounts. So it usually has to be larger amounts of narcotics in order for them to file a case, but smaller amounts they're generally not. We're trying to defer them into some sort of diversion program. Even during the interview process, a lot of times we will refer them to First Call, just because the detectives recognize this is someone that has a problem as opposed to someone that's a dealer. So we try and go that route when we can.
I guess this question is for the federal perspective, as in working together with localities. What are we doing to actually attack the actual cartels and the perspective of this drug being distributed in our area versus getting this small dealer on the corner or Joe Blow from around the corner? I know he got something, he can get it from here. What are we doing to stop the actual flow of fentanyl from the southern border? I guess I had a briefing not too long ago where there's a perspective in, I think in Arizona somewhere, and it's being shipped this way. What are we doing to attack specifically that's in the lower cartels and things in that nature?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Just like the Sergeant just said, the federal agents who are investigating narcotics are not interested in the the users and the victims, although that's often the first call we get, especially here lately. It's when some young person has overdosed and a community has been torn apart and is outraged, and we want something done. And so we're starting the investigation in that case there at the end of the chain, trying to hold those responsible who are responsible. And you're right that it's the farther you go up that source chain, really the more responsible they are. There's people here in the local community who might be providing drugs or selling drugs who are also victims, people who are supporting their own habit, people who are trying to treat that dope sickness and the only way they know how. And we try to focus all of our efforts and our resources on working it back, identifying the entire network, and dismantling them in one piece. It's not as easy as it sounds. There's a lot of pieces, and it takes a lot of cooperation and collaboration across multiple jurisdictions and prosecutors and law enforcement. But that is what we do. That's what we're trained to do. That's our mission, is to work it back as far as we can, ideally all the way back to the chemical supplier, and tie them all in together as part of a conspiracy to sell these poisons in our communities and to bring them to justice. I hope that answers the question.
I actually have two questions. One, I know a lot of kids are vaping. That's a big issue in schools right now. Is fentanyl, are you finding that fentanyl is being laced in the stuff that they vape? Is that a thing?
So you say that they're vaping?
Yes. I guess I'm asking because I speak in schools about, my sister passed away from an opioid alcohol situation, and so I speak about her story, and I learned a lot tonight. I want to make sure I'm sharing proper information, but vaping's such an issue that when I do speak in schools, a lot of administrators will talk to me and, can you hit on vaping? I don't know much about it. That's why I'm asking about the fentanyl connection with vaping. Is there one?
I haven't run into fentanyl in a vaped form,
but it is laced in pot, is that correct, at times?
it has been occasionally.
Yeah, we haven't encountered it either. We as far as vaping goes, I know there was a press release a while ago in regard to some marijuana that was cut with some fentanyl, but we've never seen that in the area. I don't know.
So it's not super common, is what you're
It's
saying?
not super common,
It's not
no.
common. It's probably only a matter of time.
Yeah,
If there's a way to make money off of it, and there's a way to sell fentanyl to a broader market, there's somebody out there who's willing to take advantage of it. It's only a matter of time until it starts happening.
Okay.
I think I'd be more concerned about the potency of the vape pens. A lot of times the THC concentrate is super high in those.
Okay.
It's kind of like he was discussing earlier, back, 20, 30 years ago, the marijuana wasn't as potent as it is now. So marijuana these kids smoking today is a lot different than it was, 20, 30 years ago.
Thank you. That's very helpful. My other question, I 100% believe in the education part of prevention. So I speak in schools, and I mainly speak in Johnson County only because I live there, and I speak in schools and all this. And what I'm finding is that these kids are telling me, because I ask at every high school and every middle school I talk to, what's the biggest issue with alcohol and drugs, do you feel like? And kids will tell me they have easy access. They can get anything they want. I feel like we need, and I know you've already done this, I'm sure, but we need to be talking to school districts and all of that. And I mean, to me, we're in Olathe School District, and I feel like this would be amazing, this kind of panel in our district. We have so many kids that are affected. And I know I've spoken at DeSoto High School, so I kind of knew your story because I spoke there recently. I just feel like we've got to, there's so much going on in the schools. Kids are dealing in schools and middle schools and high schools where our kids go to school. It's like, I feel like we need to educate and have these kind of panels in the school districts in this whole area. I don't know. I don't know how we do that or what, but.
No, I think you're on the right pace. I mean, and that's kind of what we're doing here with this Operation Engage, is trying to get the word out. Obviously, as we have more and more forums and different panelists, et cetera, the idea is, and if each one of you tells someone else, you tell someone else, because right now what we're finding is so many people, even though in my world we live fentanyl, okay, right, the drug world, that's what we do. In his world, they live it. Those who've experienced it, that's their world. But the common citizen has zero awareness of fentanyl, or very, very minimal. And what they know is half mixed with myth versus reality, and they don't know which way to go. And so that's the idea, is to try to get these forums and get people engaged, talking about it, and get the word out. Also, to your point, if you recall, I said that it can be water soluble. It can actually take fentanyl and turn it into vapes, things like that. We're not experiencing it here necessarily. Like Miles said, though, I'm sure it's just a matter of time. The most common things we're finding it mixed with are heroin, methamphetamines, and cocaine products, but especially the methamphetamine and the heroin. That's what we're finding mostly, the mixtures.
But we do an education piece in the drug enforcement unit. As a matter of fact, one of our detectives is going to meet with some of the instructors in Liberty North School District next week. And then another one of our detectives is meeting with a women's shelter. So if someone requests it, we have a program that we present. Yeah, we do it a lot. We did it at Rockhurst University earlier this year. We did it to their public safety. So yeah, if someone makes a request, we usually try and accommodate them. Sure.
Sorry. I'm just thinking of like I used to be a teacher, so I'm thinking of like a one-pager to give out to parents in the district's beginning of school, you know, of myths about fentanyl and then the facts or something like that, where like because you're right, I wouldn't have known about opioids unless my sister, she passed away from opioids and alcohol, so now I talk to kids about all the facts because there's so many myths out there, I feel like. So I don't know, that's just...
And that's part of the presentation they do as well. There's
Yeah,
a section
okay.
in there in regard to that.
Very cool.
I think one of the things we're fighting here is the stigma that we've talked about a little bit tonight, that there's a definite stigma against talking about it. It's one of the things I would ask is that you, if you're a parent or a grandparent, you have kids in schools, ask your school, can we have this kind of program? Can we talk about it? There's still a lot of we don't have that problem here attitude, that it's not in our school district, it's not our kids, but really we're all at risk, and we need to fight that stigma and talk about it openly in every forum.
I just want to piggyback on that for a second. I literally had a high school say to me, because we were on the phone talking about different presentations and whatnot, helping in the Kansas City area, say, you know, we're so grateful for what you do, and you know, we're so grateful that at this time we just don't need you or your services here. And so I got that message loud and clear, you know. And we get kids from their school all the time in our program. So, you know, obviously it's everywhere. I just wanted to piggyback on, absolutely talk to your school districts, talk to the superintendents, talk to, you know, go up to the district level. You know, there truly is, you know, if a school is willing to step out there and address it, then it's an admittance that they have that problem. And there is some fear, I think, of putting that kind of target on their own back. And I think all of the change happens grassroots from the floor up. So, I really do think it's, don't make it an option for your schools to not be addressing these things, you know, and I think it comes from the voice of the parents more than anybody else, you know, so.
And there are a ton of resources out there to provide those types of services in the schools too. Both Crossroads, First Call, and others, and we can help with that as well.
Yeah, that's what makes fentanyl so dangerous, is what he was talking about. He had, you know, easy to hide. I can pop a pill, get high, go home. If I can avoid the parents for 5 minutes, nobody's going to notice anything. Not going to smell anything. Not going to see anything on me. They're not going to see outward signs. They're not going to see my body degenerating. They're not going to see that. And so, but they might be scared of before because of the stigmas. I'll take a pill. I mean, sure. Pop a pill, get high, chill for a few minutes, you know, have fun. That's the thing about fentanyl. And that one pill can be deadly. That's why this one is so dangerous, because it tears through all those stigmas, and it tears through all socioeconomic and racial lines, and it attacks everyone the same way.
Yeah. I just want to add, I'm Regina Patterson King. I'm actually Miles's counterpart on the Kansas side for DEA. And to your question about us going into schools and stuff, as far as DEA, we will go, but we can't just show up. We have to get permission, so someone would have to invite us to come in to speak. But our job is to get out there and to let the kids know and the people know, the community know what's going on.
Yeah, I live in Jackson County, and with my experience, knowledge about drugs, it seems like marijuana is a gateway drug, and that's been my understanding from the beginning. In addition to things like alcohol and tobacco, and since the legalization of marijuana, all I see in my neighborhood and in Kansas City and Jackson County is just more drug use, all sorts of drug use. I live in the Plaza area. The last shooting outside of my house in a nice neighborhood involved 2 marijuana dealers. Neither one was arrested or prosecuted. One of them, I guess, was never captured. The last felony drug trafficking bust that occurred at a short-term rental that's next door to my house involved felony marijuana trafficking. And the officer at the scene told me that the suspect would probably be out on bail before his shift was over. And it seems like the whole medical marijuana legalization thing is just a joke. California was the first state to legalize marijuana 26 years ago. And a recent study by the government there determined that about 90% of the marijuana that's being produced by the dispensaries is being sold out the back door illegally so that they can avoid the taxes and regulations that are associated with it. So one of my big concerns now is medical marijuana. There are dispensaries all around my neighborhood. Most of the crime is related to marijuana, based on what I've heard, when there are incidents that occur in my neighborhood. So is anything going to be done about that, or have we just given up on marijuana now?
We don't have any elected officials on our panel, unfortunately, because I like your question for that very much. I think, I don't want to speak for anybody up here, but I do think the elected officials and the lawmaking process is a big piece to that, and if anybody else has anything to add to that.
I think, the courts are struggling. There's a recognition that we can't just lock up an entire generation. And there's a shift in focus that we don't want to punish the user, the one that is addicted to a substance. And I think they're feeling their way through it. Okay, so Kansas City serves 4 counties, and the different district attorneys have different views on how those drug cases should be handled. In Jackson County, they want a nexus to violence, or community concern, because they don't want to overly prosecute the user. They want the treatment route. And other counties maybe feel different, but I think they're trying to feel their way out. And at some point, we're going to come to a baseline and maybe come back a little more center. But as it is right now, the only thing law enforcement can really do is we present cases to the district attorneys in the different counties, and they will accept that case or decline it based on its own merit. So, I would argue that at the center of most all the violence, most every homicide, I spent several years as a homicide detective, and most every murder I worked was over drugs or the opposite sex, unfortunately. But that speaks to more of a sociological problem than a criminal justice problem. So I think as we go on, things will come back a little more center, and we'll learn to work better together. But right now, we're just kind of building those bridges, and we do what we can do. Does that answer the question? Does that help?
Just as someone who is experienced using and kind of the progression of that, I'm sitting here thinking, I can't think of anyone in my circle or way beyond that circle who jumped to hard drugs without first experimenting with marijuana. I can't think of anyone. And hundreds and hundreds of people that in 13 years of using and now 7 years without using, I never meet someone who is trying harder drugs before smoking marijuana. So for me, I argued that it was a gateway drug for many years, Now, there's no question to me, it is that progression up to trying harder things that would prove to be lethal.
I really want to thank you guys for your time tonight and everything that you're sharing. And my kids are grown now, but I have grandkids that are starting to reach middle school. And my question is around the DARE program. So in the Jackson County side, my kids were in Lee Summit. They had the DARE program in 6th grade. Just wondering if one, if those programs are still around, and two, if that's an avenue too where maybe some of this information is being shared. I know I'm starting to have conversations with my granddaughter about, you know, just social pressures and things like that, and oh, take this Adderall pill, it's going to be fine, and you know, because we are seeing so much of that. And I had no idea that it's so easy to get, you know, with all these social medias. So thank you for raising that awareness. But again, back to my question, the DARE program, is it still around? Is it an avenue that this information can be shared? There's probably pros and cons. Do you share it or don't? Because then maybe it entices kids to be more inquisitive. But the stats are, it's pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, we still do have the DARE program. Matter of fact, they graduated a whole bunch of different classes not too long ago. I think it's a good program, but I think they could probably continue that later on. But I think they should continue it throughout school. They just seem to stop when they're younger. But I don't know how much information they're going to retain at that age, take them forward. But just this year, they asked us to speak at some of the DARE graduations too. So they presented some more additional information because they're not drug. A lot of times those officers are involved in the drug enforcement side of things. They just look at it as a district officer. So they have somewhat of a limited experience of it.
Thanks. We had one over here. We're gonna do one or two more. Does anybody else have right here? Okay.
One last question. And again, thank you for doing this. This is really great. I think awareness is very important. I do want to say I think I could speak for a lot of, so there was a question earlier came up, is the elected officials, are they interested in things? I think there's a huge interest. It's just, you know, the question I think that I have for you is as you stated earlier, this is very complex to get people to cooperate and to move up that chain. But do you think, in your professional opinion, that is there a lack of funding maybe from government, and if it is that something that you guys are tackling and addressing to the committees to receive some money across the spectrum to be able to combat this better and assist local law enforcement in fighting this fight against fentanyl? And I take it other drugs are still an issue.
Certainly, that's part of what every law enforcement agency does, is present the statistics to the elected officials and participate in budget hearings and try to obtain more funding for more resources to attack the problem. And as you say, there is an interest, and I think by and large there's a willingness to invest in that. There's probably a lot of different ideas about the best way to do it, but I would say, especially here recently, I've seen an increase in the resources and things available. We're always short of where we'd like to be. We'd like to be able to do more. We'd like to have more resources. So I don't know if I have a concrete answer for you.
I will say something to that as well. I've learned a lot through this journey, and so I'm going to quote some stats for the DEA. But the DEA seized enough fentanyl in 2021 to kill every American, and that only accounts for 20% of what has made it into our country. So when we're talking the sheer volumes of the amount of fentanyl coming across the border, they can't arrest their way out of this. I've heard that before too. But it is going to take all of us a community effort to spread awareness and hopefully decrease the demand for the drugs in our country. So that can be a takeaway from today, is that you're all a part of this solution as well. And the more people you can talk to about it, the better off we'll all be.
Hi, my name is Maggie, and I lost my daughter to the fentanyl poisoning 14 months ago. And I'd be interested in going to the North Kansas City School District and talking to the schools. I have the time, but I can't just go knock on the door and say, hey, I want to talk. I need someone to work with me because I want to give the correct information. And when I go to the superintendent, I want him to know that I have facts and someone to go with me, so when we do tell our stories, that we're not, that we're telling the truth and how bad this is.
To that, I would say, my information was up there. Just shoot me an email, and I'll see what I can do to try to facilitate communicating with that. I'd obviously go through our media relations department. They have access to the superintendents and the PIOs from the different districts. And again, it comes down to letting the districts know that, hey, we have people that would like to talk to you about, and your students about this, that, and the other. And, they have to vet it, and then maybe reach out to, the people that have done the presentations and been through that and share the stories, learn what works and what doesn't. But I'll be happy to try to facilitate that as best I can.
Yeah, make sure you connect with the organizers here of Operation Engage. This information was shared with all of the school districts in the Northland. They all expressed extreme interest in this. I think there is quite an appetite in all of the major school districts to have this. And so I think having that spirit to go and serve that cause is something that we all need. So make sure to connect with them, because I think more opportunities will be coming for sure. Did I miss anybody that had a question? Oh, yep, one more here.
Thank you. Having been a parent that's gone through, we lost our son-in-law to fentanyl. That's when we found out our daughter was addicted. We are guardians of our grandson. Now my daughter is living with us. She's sober 5 years, and I'm absolutely thrilled. But one thing we find out is so many people that we know that have addicts in their family. At first they were all 20s and 30s, they were kids. Now we're seeing people who's, I know somebody with that was a 10-year-old who's now 14, and they're in programs, and has another one at 17. So they're really, the group that we meet with every week, it seems like they're getting younger and younger, and I know that's coming from the schools. But one thing that we are all finding out is everybody, most of the people are working and they have insurance. Insurance gives you just enough time to detox them, and then they're back out on the street. And then if your child is, it's your adult child, you can go and put them in a facility and they can check themselves out before you can get out of the parking lot. And there needs to be something that's, if you commit somebody, they have to stay long enough. And I don't know how long, but with kids, it's talking programs. And I think they need more really powerful, they almost need it like a slap in the face, how dangerous this really is. Because I'm sure you were absolutely a lovely teenager. And probably nobody's kid ever wakes up and says, well, I think I'm going to grow up and be a drug dealer, or I'm going to go up and become an addict. Nobody thinks that. And it's been long and painful. I've watched as families will tell us week after week, they've lost their entire savings trying to put their addicts in facilities. They send them out of state. I mean, they're really, I think they need more long-term, because if you're severely an addict, 30 days isn't going to do a thing for you, not even 2 months. So that's just my thought, that we need more and longer treatment facilities out there for what. But if you don't know they're using, they need to know that truly one pill can kill. I do believe you.
Thank you for sharing that. We absolutely agree. There needs to be more resources. We need to do more, all of us. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what to really add to that, except I agree completely. You know, it's all about long-term care. And this is what was said.
Yeah, so there's a great, yeah. Yep. Yep.
You can call us too, and we.
Yep.
My solution, I mean, I think if you are using drugs, if it's alcohol, whatever the case is, it has to be more than just sobriety. And the solution that I have found has been in community. I think what I found myself stuck in was a community of people who were using. And what I ended up finding instead, and I found it through Crossroads, and I know that there's multiple programs in the Kansas City area, is you are spending time with like-minded people doing like-minded things. And when that is recovery or sobriety focused, it makes it to where it becomes a way of life rather than just a good idea. That is not something that, in my experience, I have seen communicated efficiently in 30 days. It takes more time than 30 days. 30 days is a starting point, but if it is a 30-day program, it's immediately finding a community of like-minded people so you don't just end back in the same community that took you there to begin with.
And there are other there are programs out there even that insurance will, I know programs specifically that they'll take whatever the insurance gives them and they'll keep them in treatment for as long as they need to be in treatment. So those programs do exist. They're just needles in a haystack, you know, and it takes a lot of searching and a lot of looking to really find them. But again, a resource like First Call that can, you know, give a lot of different options and know the structure of a lot of those different programs, or even like Crossroads, you know, we meet with people, do free assessments. They don't all go into our program. A lot of times it's referring them other places and finding what's going to be the right fit, cost effective for their family, and so there are those resources kind of ready to help people find what they're looking for. So, sure.
Thank you for that. For those that didn't have an opportunity, there are some wonderful tables out there set up by these representatives, and there's lots of information you can gather there. This will conclude our program here. One thing I want to just tell you guys is that this is aptly named Operation Engage. Engaged communities are safer communities by definition. Thank you guys for being here and being engaged in this, and please do help spread the word. And one more time, a thank you for all of our panelists tonight.